Good evening and welcome to the Planning Commission meeting of December 18, 2019. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Astorian?
Here.
Commissioner Tarachian?
Here.
Commissioner Lee? Commissioner Manassian?
Here.
Chairperson Shabazian?
Here. Can we have the reporting regarding the posting of the agenda, please?
Yes. The agenda for this meeting was posted on Wednesday, December 11th, 2019, on the bulletin board outside City Hall and on the city's website.
All right. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right. We do not have any minutes from last meeting and no oral communications, no zoning appeals, and next item is Planning Commission items. And under new businesses, we do have one case, 322 Americana Way, 589 Americana Way, 722 Americana Way, 833 Americana Way, 889 Americana Way, 102 Caruso Avenue, and 126 Caruso Avenue. Thank you. Can we have a presentation? Do we have a presentation for this?
We do, actually.
Great.
The presentation material is behind me on the screen. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission. The Americana at Brand LLC is requesting Planning Commission recommend to the City Council approval of a proposed advertising signage overlay zone development agreement. The proposed development agreement includes the duration of the agreement, regulations of signage consistent with the particular chapter in the zoning code regulating the advertising signage overlay zone, as well as provisions for revenue sharing of signs, or what's contained on the signs. Let me step back and give you some background. In April 2004, the City Council approved the Glendale Town Center specific plan to allow for the eventual development of the Americana at Brand. At the time, the specific plan contained signage regulations for the Americana. As part of the specific plan, at the time, however, the specific plan did not allow large accessory wall signs. So that's for sort of the first component of the story. In March 2010, the City Council adopted Ordinance 5688, which added Chapter 30.26, which is the advertising signage overlay zone chapter within our zoning code. This chapter set forth the standards for establishing the advertising signage overlay zone, the criteria to allow this kind of zone. So it can't be placed all over the city. There are certain criteria that an area needs to meet in order to have this overlay on top of their land. So it established how to get an overlay zone, as well as regulations for signage within that zone, within the ASOZ, what we call the ASOZ. In part, these regulations included that ASOZ accessory signs could only advertise services and goods within the ASOZ, meaning if you have an advertising signage overlay zone on your property, the only things that they could the only things that the sign could advertise are services or goods that were sold or serviced on that site. And that's consistent with our regular sign regulations. The regulations also required that the ASOZ signs be wall signs, and they prohibited animated signs and LED signs. So that was sort of the next part of the story. Also in March 2010, a zone map amendment placed the ASOZ overlay zone, the advertising signage overlay zone, on the Americana development, as well as the Glendale Galleria. So those two sort of areas of the city have their underlying zones, but they also now, as of March 2010, had the advertising signage overlay zone placed on them. At this map amendment, or this map amendment also identified the location, size, and elevations of the ASOZ accessory signs approved in connection with the zone change. So there was a zone change, but the zone change also said, okay, here are the locations of the signs within the Galleria as well as the Americana. Next chapter in the story. In August 2013, the City Council amended Chapter 30.26, the overlay zone chapter in the zoning code, to allow non-accessory signs as well as animated signs, and expand the sign type to more than just wall signs allowed in the ASOZ. So the amended chapter also required approval of a development agreement, which brings us back to why we're here today. So the proposed development agreement implements provisions of the public benefits request as detailed in the staff report. And there's a paragraph in the staff report that details the percentage that the city will get and the percentage that after a certain point it will get a different percentage. I'm not going to get into that. But it details the public benefits request, and it also identifies the term, which is 20 years, with 2 5-year extensions. As part of your review, you must first review the development agreement for consistency with the general plan. That's your charge today. So it needs to, the development agreement needs to be consistent with the general plan, the town center specific plan, as well as the downtown specific plan. And those are all documents that are part of the town center, the Americana brand approval. All have to do with the Americana brand. And you need to review for consistency those documents prior to consideration by City Council. City Council ultimately approves the document, but you need to recommend its approval to them. Staff does believe that the development agreement is consistent with these documents. The development agreement really is just implementing revenue sharing for the signs that are already permitted under the municipal code. Under the zone change of 2013, if you recall, the signs were identified, and so the signs are already allowed there. What the DA is implementing is the revenue sharing component of that. So the development agreement is really just implementing the revenue sharing for the signs that are already allowed and provided for by the ASOZ and the town center specific plan. So those documents already allow those signs. The general plan land use designation for the town center specific plan is DSP. So the general plan has designated the Americana as DSP, and thus the development agreement is consistent with the land use element of the general plan. So if you kind of follow that logic. Mm-hmm. So again, staff believes that the development agreement is consistent with the city's general plan and recommends that you all recommend its approval to the City Council. The Planning Commission's comments and motion will be presented to the City Council. It's tentatively scheduled next month. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you.
Actually, before I stop, sorry. The map behind me shows the Americana brand. It's kind of hard to see, but the triangles in the legend, the red triangle, shows the locations of the signs that were approved in the August 2013 zone map amendment. And you also have that in your packet.
Thank you. Do the commissioners have any questions from staff?
I have two questions. One is for my knowledge. On the report here, the environmental review, it was done almost 10 years ago. Is that something that should be worried about? I know it's all billboard signs and all that stuff, but is that something that in the future will have some sort of a negative impact on our environment?
Let me just review that for a second. Yeah, at this point, the DA is just implementing the revenue sharing agreement. So there was a mitigated negative declaration and addendum done in the 2013 zone map amendment, and so this really falls under that.
Follow-up question. On these signs that we have, I know that at some point it was modified. I guess it was on August 6, 2013 that we changed that we allow animated signs and whatever.
Correct.
In the future, if the technology moves on, are we also going to consider that we're going to allow to change according to the future technology or whatnot on these signs?
We could, yes. That would potentially require an amendment to the zoning code. It would just, we'd have to take a look at it. We'd have to take a look at the changes and see what's written now, how it's different whenever it's different, and then decide.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Sure.
Any questions?
Refresh my memory. Why isn't that we allow LEDs?
Well, we do now. Yes, we didn't before 2013 because typically we don't allow animation or changeable copy signs, and the August 2013 amendment allowed for the Americana and for the Galleria them to do signs like this, those two types of signs. But the remainder of the city, for the most part, doesn't allow these types of signs.
That's the part that I had my question. Why is it that, and I know that this is the DSP in the town center.
Okay.
And that's been written in the development agreements and progressed thus far.
Right.
But let's say outside of the DSP, a business wants to have an LED animated sign, they can't do that.
Correct.
And why is that? I mean, just a quick reference would satisfy me.
Sure. I mean, it's a pretty common restriction for this city as well as most other cities not to allow that. I think when the Americana and the Galleria brought forth their ideas 10 years ago, we thought it would be appropriate for a downtown area, for a commercial area, for an area that we want to have active, we want to have exciting, but I'm not sure that it would be appropriate for every commercial area in the city.
Thank you.
Sure.
Do you have a question? I have one question. So the development agreement is written for 20 years with an option of two 5-year extensions, so totaling a 30-year. Is this a typical way that development agreements are written? Is it normal to have a 20-year agreement? I'm not, I don't think I've seen one before here presented in the city. I'm just curious to know what is usually the average time a period of time that is dedicated to the development agreement.
Madam
gonna
Chair,
defer
members
that.
of the
Yes.
commission, if I could answer that. It really is project dependent. And you're absolutely right. Most projects are shorter term, and a developer is looking to lock in certain requirements over a period of time if they're phasing in a project. And then you terminate the agreement once you're vested. This is a little bit different because this was from the beginning envisioned to capture a community benefit concept and have it recorded so that everyone's on notice what the requirements are for this revenue sharing on a going forward basis. So it's a tool that's being used in a slightly different way here than would ordinarily be used in your traditional development agreement scenario where you have a phased project. So that's why you're seeing, it's a logical question to ask because it's typically not used in this scenario, but this was the decision when we put this legislation forward that we wanted to use something that would be recorded and could follow the process that is set forth in the government code for undoing it. It's more formalized. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. A follow-up. So if we do have our codes changed 10 years from now or 15 years from now, will there be actually room to adjust it, or is this just written in concrete and for 20 years and then additional 5 and 5?
No, that's important. One of the issues here as well is that we did not freeze the zoning. When we have a development agreement with the Galleria, that was the first ASOZ development agreement, and we did not freeze the zoning. And so that would not lock in, the zoning is not locked in on this one. So if there were changes moving forward in technology and et cetera, that would come to you in terms of a zone code change, a zone code amendment, and your recommendation to the City Council. Those would apply to this, whether or not the Galleria or the Americana would want to take advantage of those changes, which presumably it would be improved technology.
Yes.
That is up to them, but they wouldn't be locked in to retaining the technology in the state that it is when they erect the signs.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just curious to know, is there a development agreement currently signed with the Americana?
No, there was when we initially completed the project.
Correct.
And that was more of the traditional development agreement because took a longer period of time.
Yes.
And they needed that assurance that they could have the zoning frozen until they completed and got a certificate of occupancy
Yes.
and finalized. So there was, but that expired.
Okay.
So there isn't one that exists for any purpose right now on the Americana site.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. No other questions? If there are no other questions, I do have one card here. It's Mr. Ben Howell.
Hello.
Hello.
Is this on? Madam Chair, members of the Commission, thank you. My name is Ben Howell. I'm General Counsel at Caruso, the owner of the Americana brand. You have a copy of our letter in your package. We support the staff's report and wanted to thank staff for working with us in preparing the development agreement. As the report states and staff mentioned, the development agreement is simply implementing the revenue share arrangement pursuant to the City Council's 2013 legislation. There's no additional signage being authorized by this agreement, and we would ask for your favorable recommendation today, and we're here to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. With that, I'm going to close the public speaking portion and deliberate. If you guys have any questions, if there's a motion.
I'll second if somebody would make the motion.
I'll move.
Right? Can we have a roll call, please? We have a motion from
For approval.
Commissioner Trakchian and seconded by Commissioner Asturian.
Okay, a motion to recommend to the City Council approve the project. This will be a roll call. Mr. Karachian,
Yes.
Mr. Astorian,
Yes.
Mr. Manassian,
Yes.
and Ms. Shabazzian.
Yes,
Great, motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
perfect. All right. Thank you. Do we have any community development department updates?
No, just that we wish you all a very happy holiday and a healthy and happy, safe New Year.
Thank you. And commissioners, I will say same to you guys, staff. It's been a great year, 2019. And Happy New Year and happy holidays to all my colleagues.
Dita,
Thank you.
All right, with that, the meeting has been adjourned. Thank you.
thank you.